I always loved it when my high school French teacher passed back work. I felt like I was some sort of French god. After all, I could recite not one, but 2 poems in French. So as she passed back our first entry in our new French journals, where I was required to write 10 sentences in French about my life, I was beaming. I just knew what I would see when I opened the cover of that still new-smelling, uncreased notebook. And there it was, a check. I looked around, frantic, at my neighbors. Had I misunderstood the assignment? Where was the missing plus sign that should be sitting next to that check on the top of my paper? Then I saw it. The only student who had gotten that check plus, and when I looked at his paper, I was shocked by what else I saw. She had made many corrections to his spelling and grammar. My hand popped into the air and I argued my case to my teacher. Her response? Simple and cutting to the bone. He had really used the language. He had tried it out. I knew I had been treated unfairly. How can being wrong be more right than being right? Interestingly, I practiced language experimentation a lot in high school. In English. I always played with English words and experimented with different types of poetry and fiction writing. I crafted essays using words that never normally belonged together and included sentences that included too many or too little words. But I still treated my French course like science, not art. How would my teacher ever understand what I was trying to say if I put the direct object in the wrong spot? As a young person, dying to be right and maintain godly status in French class, I just didn't understand how learning a new language works. It took many more entries and a lot of conversation to feel comfortable expanding my writing, experimenting with the language. My French teacher knew something I didn't. She had read Stephen Creation. As a bilingual teacher himself, Stephen saw the importance of second language acquisition, though apparently not in French, which he admits he did very badly in. Throughout his research, he created the 5 stages of language acquisition. And if you read the detailed description of these phases, you will read one phrase a lot. Makes grammatical errors. My French teacher knew that, which is why the more I wrote, and therefore the more mistakes I made, the more pluses I got next to that otherwise lonely check mark. She made me feel like mistakes were normal. And she always called our writing practice. As a teacher now, I try to focus on that one aspect which I believe is guaranteed to help students learn language. I learned and experienced it myself from my French teacher. Create an environment where mistakes were welcome, where mistakes were an important part of learning language. How? As a middle school teacher, I have attempted each year to make my room a paradise, where all students accept each other and encourage others and never make fun of their mistakes. But I teach in reality. And each year I take the opportunity to learn to be better from the teachers around me. I'd like to share with you 3 simple ways I have seen to help you create an environment that makes all students feel the same comfort I did in my French room, no matter where the direct object of the sentence ended up. Number 1, notice out loud your own mistakes and don't be embarrassed. In fact, I still often misspell embarrass when I write it on the board. By this, I don't mean quote Thomas Edison and show a picture of his many different light bulb attempts. I mean real, modern, personal examples of how you make mistakes in everyday life and how you rebound quickly. When they laugh at me, recounting stories about how I still can't cook rice correctly, I remind them. It takes 10,000 hours to be considered an expert, and I'm only on hour 40. Number 2, create a mindset wall. One math teacher I know added phrases to her word wall, not just formulas. Next to a equals pi r squared, it says the phrase she is trying to teach them to say instead of what she normally hears. Instead of saying, I'll never be as smart as her, she encourages her students to use the phrase, I'm going to try what she is doing. By changing words, she works to change the way her class thinks about mistakes. Mistakes are welcome because they show how you can get better. Her hope and goal is that her students will celebrate learning, not being correct. Number 3, celebrate mistakes and the steps students take to correct them. A social studies teacher I know reinvented her student work wall. After several years of putting up the assignments with the highest marks, she made a change. Now, she puts up work from students that looked at their mistakes and showed their learning by making changes. She purposely hangs the drafts next to each other on the wall and points out to the students the progress of each student, not the correctness. For her, making changes, acknowledging your own language mistakes, and having the motivation and confidence to fix them is an act of bravery. And who doesn't want to be called brave? She makes sure, by changing the types of learning she praises, students in her class see mistakes as the first step of achievement. As an adult and a teacher, I try to do this in my own classroom. And I notice my coworkers who work hard to create the same mistake-friendly environment for the teachers as they do for their students. But it amazes me when I look back how oblivious I was to the fact the same things I try to do now to my students to encourage mistakes were being done to me. The proof? All sorts of mark all over my work. And yes, a whole bunch of check pluses. My French teacher challenged me to find the difference between the word wrong and the word mistake. To reframe my thinking when it came to learning another language, from wrong is more right than being right, to risking mistakes is more important than being perfect. And if we are challenging our students to proudly and bravely make mistakes, shouldn't we, as their teachers, lead by example? In closing, ne dites jamais oups, dites toujours intéressant, or, something close to that.